Welcome to OLC 40. This is class 12. I am Jillian Percy, and we go through all the ways to reach me. All right. While I'm in the studio, you can reach me at 1-800-465-7144. During the day, when I'm not in the studio, you can reach me at 1-800-667-3703. You can fax me your work at 1-800-463-7852. You can also email me your work at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you want to rewatch a recording, it is at gpercywasa with capitals on G, P, and W. All right, grammar. We are talking today about prefixes. Prefixes are a little tiny phrase or mini word that goes at the beginning of a verb that changes the meaning of the verb. So for example, the prefix re means to do something again. And when we add it to the front of a verb, it means the subject is doing the action over again. So for some example, this was nicely lined up and it came unlined. I apologize, guys. Redo, retie, respark, renew. Retrace, review, rewind. Reheat, repaint, rewash. Reread, refill, repot. Reupholster, and recheck. So if you know that re means to do something over and you come across a word that has that, you already know, okay, well, whatever this main base word means, re means do it again. Some other really common prefixes are un, which can mean not, or it can also mean reverse. So the meaning of not works well for words that are like unbelief, unafraid, unhappy, because it would mean like, no belief, not afraid, not happy, unhealthy, unkind, unimportant, and unsure. But sometimes it means like an action is being reversed, like it's been done and they're undoing or redoing the action. So you can tie your shoes, but you can untie them. It's not that they're not tied, it's that they were tied and you're undoing that. Undo or undone, which is the past tense, untangle, unpack, unlock, unwrap, or unfold. And understanding prefixes can help you understand new or unusual words, or even words that get made up for fantasy or science fiction stories, because they usually still follow those English rules of grammar. So here is a long list of some common and uncommon ones. A or an often mean like without or a lack of or not. One of the reasons why there's multiple ones that have the word not is we pull these prefixes from Greek, from Latin, from Rome. There's all sorts of places we pull our prefixes from because English is a language that borrows heavily from other languages. So anyways, a or an can mean things like amoral, like a lack of morals, acellular, which I'm not sure what that means, very sciencey, abyss, achromatic. Achromatic is like without color. Anta, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, anta or anti is before or earlier. I've usually heard it in terms of like antebellum, where they talk about it in the South, right? Antecedent, antedate, antemeridian, anterior. Anti, this form is like against something, anti-climax, anti-aircraft, antiseptic, antibody. Auto is like self or the same. So autopilot is like the plane is flying itself. Autobiography is a story about yourself. Automobile is a car that drives itself more or less. The idea being like it's no longer needing horses to pull it, right? Autofocus, the camera will focus itself. Circum is like around or about. So circumvent, circumnavigate, circumscribe, they're all talking about going around something in a circle, essentially. Co is like with or together. Co-pilot, co-worker, coexist, co-author. Most common one would be cooperate, right? Com or con, they both mean together or with, like a companion, commingle, contact, concentrate. And you notice here, sometimes it sounds more like com, sometimes it sounds more like co. I don't have any idea why the pronunciation changes slightly. It just seems to be affected by what letters are following. Contra or contro means against or opposite, like contradict, contrast, contrary, or controversy. So let's say you see a word, anti-military. She is anti-military. What does that mean? Well, military means like the armed forces. Anti-military, well, anti's against. So she's against the military. Here we've got this big long word, contraindicated. That medicine is contraindicated with that disease. What does this mean? Well, indicated would be like, let's use it. Contraindicated is the opposite, right? It means we're against it. That doesn't work well with this disease. Let's see where we're at. Okay. D means down or away from. Devalue, deactivate, debug, degrade, deduce. Dis, not apart or away. Disappear, disagreeable. Disbar, dissect. N is kind of like putting something into it or covering it, like enclose, entangle, enslave, encase, envelope. X is like out of or from or former. Extract, exhale, excavate, ex-president. Extra. As compared to X, extra means like more, beyond, extracurricular, extramarital, extravagant. Hetero means different. We're kind of familiar with the heterosexual, but it gets used in other places too. Heterodox, heterogeneous. Homo or homeo means same or alike. These get used a lot in science, actually. A homonym means basically words that sound the same. Sorry, look the same. Homophone would be words that sound the same. Homeostasis, that's a science word for sure there. Hyper, over, more, or beyond. Hyperactive, hypersensitive, hypercritical. So like you've got the base word and this was going beyond that. It's way more than that. IL, IM, IN, and IR all have the concept of not or without. Illegal, immoral, inconsiderate, irresponsible. But in can also just mean the concept of being in or into something. Insert, inspection, infiltrate. And then inter is like between or among, like intersect, interstellar, intervene, interpenetrate. You're thinking of something going between two things. Oh, hang on, I'm going to go back there. Captain, start the engine's hyperdrive or we will never escape. Now, this is a made-up word, right? There is no such thing as a hyperdrive. But if it did exist, well, a drive would be kind of like the main way the engine works. Hyperdrive would be some sort of extra boosted drive, right? They tried to enslave the alien. Well, people know what slave means. Enslave would be like put into slavery, right? All right. Intra or intro, within or inside. Intravenous, like a intravenous line. Intragalactic, introvert. You might see intramural leagues, right, between different classes. Macro is large or prominent, like macroeconomics or macrostructure, macrocosm. Micro is the opposite. Micro is very small. Microscope, microcosm, microbe. Mono would be one or a single or alone, like a monocle is like a glass with just one glass. Monologue, one person talking. Monogamy, one person with another person. Monotony, one thing happening, but it's boring. Non is not or without. A non-entity, non-aggressive, non-essential, non-fiction. Omni is all or every. It's often used though in terms of describing God, like omniscient is talking about like being all-knowing. It's just kind of a phrase they often use for God. The other one you might see omnivorous is eats everything. That isn't God-like. Omnidirectional goes in all directions, right? Post means after or behind. Postmortem, posterior, postscript, postoperative. So if I was looking at, one more, pre or pro is the opposite of post. It's before or forward. Precede, predict, project, or prologue. If I say I need to preview my lessons before I teach them, well, viewing is looking, right? So preview means I kind of need to look at them before I teach them. If I have, he used the macro lens on the camera, what's the macro lens going to do? Well, macro means large. It's probably going to make things large, right? Here we have sub. Sub means under or lower. Submarine, subsidiary, substandard. Sim or syn both mean same time or together. Symmetry, symposium, synchronize, synapse. Tele is from or over a distance, like telecommunications, telemedicine, television, telephone. Trans would be across or beyond or through, like transmit, transaction, translation, transfer. Tri is 3 or every third. Tricycle, trimester, triangle, triathlon. Un, we've talked about already. Uni looks almost like un, but it's said completely differently. Uni means like one or a single, like a unicorn, unicellular, unicycle, unilateral. Up means to the top, but it could also mean like higher or better, like upbeat, updo, upgrade, upload, uphill, upstage, upscale, or uptempo. So unidirectional. If I say the drill in that machine is unidirectional, what am I meaning? Well, I mean, it can go in any direction, right? It's not fixed. It's not only going in a straight line. It can go in any direction I want it to. Subterranean. A subterranean bunker, well, terrain would mean like ground, right? So subterranean would mean underground. All right. So we started working on the concept of opinions yesterday, and we've got some more assignments on opinions. So this assignment 26, is about a series of paragraphs expressing an opinion. This is one of our bigger assignments. This is worth 50 marks. So we're just kind of have this little graphic. I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry. It didn't want to multiply very well over here. An opinion paragraph is a type of persuasive writing, right? You're trying to argue somebody or convince somebody. Where can you find this kind of writing? They're everywhere. It's on billboards and advertisements. You can find opinion paragraphs in letters to politicians or newspapers, in a movie review or game reviews, in your textbooks. Why do people create opinion paragraphs? Well, these paragraphs are used to convince people to believe something or to do something. So advertisers want you to believe that you need their product so that you'll buy it. Politicians want to persuade you to vote for them. People who write letters to the editor may want others to read their ideas and then join them in changing something about their communities. How is an opinion paragraph organized? Persuasive writing comes in a variety of forms. So like a letter to the editor is going to be a little bit different from a movie or a game review. But in general, opinion paragraphs follow this pattern. First, there's a statement of your opinion. I believe, I think, I feel. Then the evidence, a reason why the opinion is correct, at least in your mind. And usually it will include one or more of the following: facts, statistics, certain kinds of events, anecdotes, like little stories from your own personal experiments. Sometimes it'll include statements from experts. And then after like 4 or 5 sentences of that, usually there'll be a concluding comment, which restates the opinion. Sometimes it might include a recommendation for action. So I wanted to give you some examples. This is, I forget which magazine this is from. Sorry, I should have put it on there. There was an article in the magazine called "Forest Won't Save Us from Climate Change." And it had a lot of people writing back to the magazine quite upset because they felt it was overlooking some really important things. It said, "Forests won't save us from climate change," argues that because of climate change driven wildfires, forests are making the climate crisis worse, not better. But in many parts of the world, including the eastern United States, wildfires are not the biggest threat to carbon sinking forests. Logging is. As the author notes, logging releases much of the carbon stored in forests. carbon that will not be recaptured for decades or centuries at best. Yet, agencies like the U.S. Forest Service routinely target carbon-rich forests for timber projects. In North Carolina, for example, the agency recently announced plans to more than quadruple the amount of logging in the Nantahala and Pisgah National Forests without any provision to spare our oldest, healthiest, and most carbon-dense forests. Forests are and can continue to be an essential and cost-effective climate solution. But for these incredible landscapes to live up to their climate potential, we must condemn and push back on reckless policies that put mature and old growth forests and the centuries worth of carbon that they store on the chopping block. And this opinion is from Sam Evans, who is living in Asheville, North Carolina. He is a senior attorney at the Southern Environmental Law Center. He is also the leader of its National Forests and Parks program. So it does follow the format that we talked about, right? Right at the beginning, he states what has been said, and then he disagrees with it, right? He states some facts. He calls for action at the very end. So this is an example, it's a short example, but an example of an argumentative essay or letter, essentially. This is one section of a very long movie review. I would have made it even longer if I could have, I apologize. But only so much would fit on here. So this is a movie review about the Barbie movie. And this person was not as impressed. Like some people have said a lot of positive things. This guy was not impressed by the Barbie movie. So here's his words. By this point, Barbie has begun to do a lot more telling and a lot less showing. Its themes are presented like flat lays of Barbie outfits, delivered in lines of dialogues that are supposed to be profound, but come off as lifeless. There are still some funny gags, a line about the Kens trying to win over the Barbies by playing their guitars at them made me snort, but the good jokes are drowned out by many of the self-aware ones, like the way the Mattel executives, all men, sit around a conference table and strategize ways to make money off selling their idea of female agency. The question we're supposed to ask as our jaws hang open is, how did the Mattel poobahs let these jokes through? But these real-life execs, counting their doubloons in advance, know that showing what good sports they are will help rather than hinder them. They're on Team Barbie, after all, and they already have a long list of toy and movie tie-ins on the drawing board. Meanwhile, we're left with Barbie the movie, a mosaic of many shiny bits of cleverness with not that much to say. In the pre-release interviews they've given, Gerwig and Robbie have insisted their movie is smart about Barbie and what she means to women, even as Mattel executives have said they don't see the film as being particularly feminist. And all parties have insisted that Barbie is for everyone. Barbie probably is a feminist movie, but only in the most scattershot way. The plot hinges on Barbie leaving her fake world behind, and like Pinocchio and the Velveteen Rabbit before her, becoming real. Somehow, this is an improvement on her old existence, but how can we be sure? The movie's capstone is a montage of vintagey-looking home movies. Gerwig called this footage from Barbie's cast and crew a blur of joyful childhood moments and parents showing warmth and love. Is this the soon-to-be real Barbie's future, or are these the doll Barbie's memories? It's impossible to tell. By this point, we're supposed to be suitably immersed in the bath of warm, girls can do anything fuzzies the movie is offering us. These bold, bored little girls we saw at the very beginning of the film, dashing their baby dolls against the rocks, are nowhere in sight. In this Barbie land, their unruly desires are now just an inconvenience. So this is long, it actually is much longer, but he does quotes from the movie. He doesn't really provide any stats. He does provide anecdotes, and he definitely argues against it. He doesn't really have any call for action, but he's clearly not impressed by the movie so far. Okay. On the next page, you're going to find a sample opinion. It is a series of paragraphs from a student who wrote the Ontario Secondary School Literacy Test that was written in an earlier year. That's important because this class replaces that literacy test. So some of the assignments that we have basically mimic that test. You are to read through this opinion and then complete the task that follows. I'm going to read it with you because it is handwriting, and I'm aware that not everybody can read handwriting these days. It says, is it a good idea for high school students to have a part-time job? And here is the student's response to this. Students having a part-time job is an interesting topic. In my opinion, I believe that it is a great idea for students to have part-time jobs for three main reasons. Firstly, it provides them with work experience that can be developed and further explored in future occupations. Secondly, it teaches students important personal skills and how to work socially with other coworkers. And lastly, I believe that it gives the students a chance to give back to their community. So that's their intro paragraph. They're basically telling you, hey, here's the reasons we're going to discuss further in my upcoming essay. And then they go on to do that. First of all, working part-time at an early age allows us students to develop mature skills and work experience. Going to work only when you're an adult is a disadvantage because you have to learn everything right from scratch. When you have the ability to explore different jobs as a student, I think that you can learn lifetime experiences that you will need in future occupations. It is much easier to develop and explore new ideas as an employee when you're young, so you can learn from your mistakes and use them to your advantage to build on these experiences. Altogether, I believe that working a part-time job as a student provides you with learning experiences every day. Secondly, along with experience, part-time jobs teach you important personable skills. Working as a student teaches you skills such as responsibility, respect for coworkers, and most importantly, social skills. You can develop these skills every day on a part-time job, but what is key is that you can improve on these skills and use them as an adult. What better way is there to learn how to treat others and take care of yourself than to develop them at an early age? Also, working as a student allows you to learn how to manage your time effectively. As a whole, it allows you to develop many skills needed for future jobs. Finally, I think that working at a young age gives students a chance to give back to their community. People are always stressing out how us teenagers do not do enough for society, and part-time jobs allow us to do this. It also allows us to provide everyday services to people. Altogether, students can get involved in their communities and give back good service to everyone. In conclusion, I believe that giving students part-time jobs is a great idea. It gets students off the street and into great learning experiences. It not only provides us with great skills, but teaches us discipline and responsibility. It gives teenagers a chance to become personable and develop for future endeavors. Okay, so you are to choose one of the following statements and keep it in mind, and you can decide whether you agree with it or not. So I want to point out, you don't have to agree on this one. You are welcome to not agree. That is fine, okay? So the first one, hang on, something's moved here. Let me see if I can move it. I can. Okay. Men should be forced by law to financially support any children they have. Or young people who return from juvenile detention should have to complete community service hours and write a letter of apology for past behaviors. Come up with reasons why you agree or disagree with one of these. You got to pick one first and record your thoughts and ideas. So now that you've had a chance to think about whether you agree or disagree with one of the above statements, It is time to begin the process of writing your own opinion piece. It will need to be at least 4 paragraphs in length, and you must use the writing process. When you are done, your opinion will be a page in length, handwritten. Your draft copy or rough copy should be handwritten, while your final copy can be either neatly handwritten or a computer printout. Be sure to show that you've done some revising and editing with your rough copy. The rough copy is worth 20 marks, your final copy is worth 30 marks, and the total is 50 marks. Okay, quick review of the writing process. Pre-writing is the planning stage. You gather and you generate ideas. The main goal at this stage is to get the ideas flowing and put them to paper. You can do mapping or brainstorming. Some people would also do, like, they'd order their paragraphs at this stage too, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit. Second stage is drafting. You begin the process of giving shape to your ideas by designing a rough outline and writing the first draft. See, they include outline as part of this, as part of the draft. I'm not sure I would, but that's okay. The words and phrases from stage 1 are put into sentences in this stage, but usually sentences that will need some refining. Revising is our third stage. You will look over your piece of writing to make sure that the ideas flow smoothly and that the entire piece makes sense. Changes are then made to improve the piece of writing by adding, cutting, replacing, and reordering. If a computer is used, text can easily be changed using the many features of WordPerfect or Microsoft Word or Google Docs, which you have as a student, remember. All right, the next stage is editing. This is the fourth stage. At this point, you need to concern yourself with spelling, grammar, punctuation. This is the first time that you need to worry about these. Now, having said that, if you see mistakes earlier, by all means, change them, okay? You don't want to be ridiculous. There's no point leaving everything to the end if you can already see it. Doing it any time before now is unnecessary because you might change and because it can lessen the creative process. It should be noted here that proofreading is checking for typographical errors in the final copy. So for example, whenever I write the word the, I know how to write it, but when I type it, for some strange reason, I always spell it as TEH, and I have to always check for that. Publishing. This is final stage can be as simple as writing a final copy of the piece of writing or producing a copy on a computer using WordPerfect or Microsoft Word or Google Docs. It can also be as complex as submitting it to a magazine for formal publication. Either way, the main issue is that you will be creating a final copy for a potential reader or a wider audience. It's important to note that writing is not a 1 to 5 stage process. Many of the best writers have to do numerous drafts and many revisions before they're ready for the editing stage. The number of drafts and revisions a writer does is no reflection of his or her writing ability, and neither will it be for you. The other day, I saw a little interview between Stephen King and R.R. Martin, the guy that wrote Game of Thrones. And Stephen King was saying that he makes sure to write 6 pages a day. That's his goal. That takes him 3 hours. And Martin was basically saying sometimes he's lucky to get a sentence. Both those guys are famous, popular, rich writers, and yet they still have problems getting the work done and they have to spend a lot of time on it. So don't worry if you do as well, it's just part of the process. Those are 2 topics. Neither one may call to you. If you are having trouble figuring out which one you want to choose, you might want to set up a quick chart for yourself. Set a timer on for 5 or 10 minutes and just start writing down as many ideas as you can for the first topic. Then reset the timer for another 5 minutes and try to write down as many ideas as you can for the second topic. And then after you're finished, take a look. Which ideas came more easily? Which one do you have more ideas and examples for? Is there one that you feel more passionately about? You can be passionately for it or passionately against it. That's fine too. Often doing a little bit of quick pre-writing here can make which topic you feel more comfortable writing about very obvious. All right. This is a little video on writing a persuasive essay. Let me see if I can pull it up for us. Oh, it keeps wanting to do that. Why does it want to do that? Hang on a second. It wants me to do something or other with that browser, but I'm not quite sure what it is. Let's see here. Okay.
Everyone has disagreements, whether it's who is the best performer of all time or what is the tastiest flavor of ice cream. Someone is going to have an opinion that might differ from yours. That doesn't stop us from trying to convince each other of our perspective. This is where persuasive essays come into play. Persuasive writing is used to sway our readers to a certain viewpoint or opinion of the writer. How's that done? Today, we'll go over the purpose of persuasive writing and how to create an effective persuasive piece. Let's get started. Persuasive essays, also known as argumentative essays, are texts that are meant to convince the reader of something. There are other things besides essays that can be persuasive, such as speeches and social media posts. From politics to music to arguing why purple is the best color ever, anything can be made into a persuasive text. But the focus of this video is persuasive essays. When writing a persuasive essay, there is a structure you can follow to help make your argument clear and effective. The essay is typically made up of 3 main sections: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. To write an effective persuasive essay, each section should contain specific points you want to discuss. The introduction paragraph of your essay should always introduce the topic you will be discussing. A good introduction paragraph will also have a hook, which is a sentence that grabs your reader's attention. Once you have your hook, you will state your thesis. A thesis is the main point or argument that you want to prove in your essay. Every persuasive essay must have a thesis. Lastly, you should always end each section of your essay with a concluding sentence. This is a sentence that wraps up the end of the paragraph and helps transition into the next paragraph. Let's look at an example of an introduction paragraph of a persuasive essay. Long ago, ancient Egyptians worshipped cats. They believed they were godly creatures. Today, cats are still very beloved, but as household pets. Some cats aren't so lucky. There are many cats who have yet to find their forever home. Cats are amazing animals that you should consider adopting because they are very intelligent, have an urgent need to be placed in a home, and make great companions. These are just a few reasons I'll discuss as to why cats should be protected. This introduction paragraph had a hook. It grabbed our attention by talking about ancient cats and related it to cats today. We see there is a thesis. The writer believes we need to adopt homeless cats, ideally from shelters, and gives 3 reasons why. Lastly, they concluded the introduction paragraph by saying they would give more details about their reasons. Next comes the body paragraphs. The body of a persuasive essay holds all the main points you, as the writer, want to argue. It's best to separate your points by paragraphs. So if you have 3 main arguments, you should have at least 3 body paragraphs, explaining them in detail. When you argue your points in the paragraph, you must make sure to explain why these reasons support your thesis. Let's look at an example. We can see here that the author addressed the 3 main reasons that support the thesis with 3 body paragraphs. Each paragraph began with a transition word or hook, then went into detail to support the reason, and lastly, it ended the paragraph with a concluding sentence. The conclusion of a persuasive essay is a summary of all the points mentioned earlier that wraps up the essay and often includes a catchy ending to drive the point home. Whether you have been thinking of adopting for a long time or just considered it, cats everywhere are in need of a home. What better way to help an intelligent animal in need and make a new friend than to adopt a shelter cat? As we can see, conclusion paragraphs don't need to be super long. As long as they summarize the overall thesis and arguments of the essay, it is an effective closing to a persuasive essay. As you're writing the essay, there are a few tips and tricks to keep in mind to make sure your persuasion is more effective. Repetition. Don't say the same thing so many times that you start to sound redundant, but find ways to bring back your main argument throughout the essay. Your readers and your listeners will remember your argument better if you repeat and emphasize it throughout the piece. Real-world examples. Whether you're using data, emotions, or credibility to drive your point home, you should always try to use real-world examples to further persuade your readers. Call to action. A good thesis in a persuasive essay is a statement that asks the reader to do something. Think hard about what you want to convince people of and narrow that action into one clear sentence. The rest of your essay should revolve around that. Okay, let's quickly review everything we talked about to wrap up. The main purpose of a persuasive essay is to persuade the reader to a certain viewpoint or opinion of the writer. The essay will have an introduction paragraph that introduces the main argument, multiple body paragraphs that discuss sub-arguments that support the main argument, and a conclusion that wraps things up. And finally, if you want to make your persuasion more effective, remember to repeat your main argument throughout the paper. Try to use real-world examples to support your points and make your thesis a call to action. That's all for this review. Thanks for watching and happy studying.
Okay, I really liked that. I thought it was really clear, and I appreciated how she had the examples right there for us to take a look at. So here is a little checklist that's been included. It is items that you should be checking to make sure you do the assignment correctly. So first of all, in your reading, check and make sure that you've read your sources carefully, that you've used appropriate sources effectively, and that you've taken notes on key points. The reason to do this is to make sure you don't plagiarize. I know people are tempted to copy and paste, but if you take notes, it becomes so much easier to make sure you're writing in your own words. Planning. I've determined my opinion on the topic and considered my reasons for thinking this way. I've planned my response with rough notes. Writing. I have written a series of paragraphs in complete sentences. I've written an introductory paragraph that clearly presents my opinion. I've written at least 3 body paragraphs, including sufficient and relevant supporting details that explain and give reasons for my opinion. I've written a concluding paragraph that summarizes my opinion. I've shown an understanding of concepts, conveyed an effective tone through word choice and level of language, used connecting words and linking sentences, and organized my ideas clearly so that my reader can follow and understand my opinion. During the revising and editing stage, I've used the stages of the writing process to revise my work. I've created opinion paragraphs that will appeal to my audience, created opinion paragraphs that meet my purpose. I've checked my grammar, spelling, and punctuation, and I had a peer edit my work. That just means basically that you had somebody else look it over and help check for spelling, grammar, punctuation. Producing. I have neatly written or typed my final copy. I have chosen an appropriate title. I'm going to come on back to that if I need to in a second. Hang on a second. Okay. Here is a rubric that I'll be using when I mark the paragraph, okay? First category is knowledge and understanding. 0 to 49 is a fail. If you demonstrate limited knowledge or limited understanding of what you read, then that's a fail. Adequate is 50 to 64. Considerable is 65 to 79. And exceeding would be 80 to 100. Thinking and inquiry, there we're looking at critical and creative thinking skills. For example, developing your ideas, selecting ideas, evaluating, organizing your information, and explaining. And again, it's the same adverbs. Limited is a fail. Adequate is 50 to 64. Considerable is 65 to 79. And a high degree would be 80 to 100. Communication. So communication of information and ideas, communication to a specific audience and for a specific purpose, use of form of opinion paragraphs. And again, limited abilities, moderate abilities, considerable, and then high. Applying this, the application of language conventions, the application of reading strategies, the application of the writing process, and the application of various literacy skills. So limited effectiveness, moderate, considerable, and high. I wanted to go back to one thing that caught my eye, and that was this part here, communication for audience and purpose. Let's go back to where's the assignment real quick. Here we go. Men should be forced by law to financially support any children they have. Okay, so let's say you agreed with that. Who's your audience? Who are you trying to convince? Are you trying to convince other people? Are you trying to convince lawmakers because you want them to change the law? Are you trying to convince lawyers so that they'll enforce like financial agreements? Think about who you're writing to. Young people who return from juvenile detention should have to complete community service hours and write a letter of apology for past behaviors. Again, who is your audience? Are you writing to juvenile offenders and saying, hey, here's what I think you should do? Are you writing to chief and council and saying, hey, here's what I think should happen before people come back? Are you writing to your MPP about what you think this should happen? Think about who you're writing to because it does change your tone and what kind of things you say to them. So I wanted to point that out because we didn't really discuss it a whole lot, but it does come up in the marking sheet. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned it again to you guys, okay? Let me back up again. Here we are. Okay. Lesson 8 was the making a prediction assignment we did yesterday, and then the paragraph there. And then I would give you an overall mark, okay? Writing tip. It's important in writing a paragraph to have a mixture of sentence structures and length. A series of short, simple sentences can sound choppy and incomplete. A series of consistently long, complex and compound sentences can make it hard to follow the ideas or arguments. It can also be somewhat off-putting to read. If you tend to write a lot of short sentences, think about how to combine some of them to help make your paragraph more interesting. If you tend to write long, convoluted sentences, think about how to shorten or condense some of your sentences so the paragraph is easier to read. Okay, so in this one, the problem is that there's too many long sentences and we need to fix it. I had a short one too, but I'm not sure where it went to. So we're going to read the long version and see what we can do to fix it. The problem is too many long sentences. I find myself thinking about the teacher in the story and wondering what she's thinking of Jimmy and why she is acting the way she does. I see her constantly reaching out to Jimmy in various ways, trying to include him in lessons, trying to talk to him privately, trying to find work that is interesting, trying to leave him alone when that is all he seems to want. I wonder how she views Jimmy, if she thinks he is all messed up, or if she understands where he's coming from, or if maybe she doesn't know what to think. So a lot of these sentences are run-on sentences, which are inappropriate in the first place, but also some of them might not be run-on, but just still be a little bit long. And because all of them are long, it comes off funny. So let's try and shorten some of them, okay? I find myself thinking about the teacher in the story and wondering what she's thinking about Jimmy. That's fine. That's like a little compound sentence and it's just fine. Okay, but it doesn't need to go on. I wonder why she's acting the way she does. I'm just going to change the and to, I wonder why she is acting the way she does. I see her constantly reaching out to Jimmy in various ways. I think that's a sentence all by itself. And then all the different ways that she reaches out could be their own sentences too. I already said I see. I notice her trying to include him in lessons. And then I'm going to make that a period. She also tries to talk to him privately. Period. Sometimes she is trying to find work that is interesting. I have the word trying a lot, which is kind of bugging me a little bit now. I notice, I see, that's another way I could put that. I recognize, I'll put I recognize. I might want to change that later, but I recognize that I'm gonna take away the try. She leaves him. Leaves him alone when that is what he seems to want. I wonder how she views Jimmy. Hang on a second. Does she think he is all messed up? I'm asking questions here. Or does she understand where he is coming from? I don't want to end on a question, so I'm going to kind of change this part a little bit, okay? So maybe she doesn't know what to think, but maybe she has seen students like him before and understands him. Okay. So let's kind of read this over. Why is it unhappy there? Don't know. I find myself thinking about the teacher in the story and wondering what she's thinking of Jimmy. I wonder why she is acting the way she does. I see her constantly reaching out to Jimmy in various ways. I notice her trying to include him in lessons. She also tries to talk to him privately. Sometimes she is trying to find work that is interesting. I recognize that she leaves him alone. Why is it doing that? Leaves him alone when that is what he seems to want. I wonder how she views Jimmy. Does she think he is all messed up, or does she understand where he's coming from? Maybe she doesn't know what to think, but maybe she has seen students like him before and understands him. Now, why is it unhappy about tries? Let me see over here. My brain is unhappy with that. Hang on, review. Separating the IES out from everything else. I'm not sure why. Okay, I'm going to leave that for right now then. All right. So one important thing for a longer essay like this is ordering or outlining your ideas for your essay. So for example, let's say I was writing on a different topic like why I'm against capital punishment, which is another word for the death penalty. So my big ideas might be, well, police and the courts can make honest mistakes. Dishonest police, lawyers, judges, and authorities could use it to deliberately punish innocent people they have a vendetta against. And the effects that it has on those to carry out the sentence could be kind of negative. So then I'm going to take those big ideas and think of the details to flesh out a paragraph. Now, these are kind of jot format. So police and the courts can make honest mistakes. Sometimes circumstantial evidence is the main source of a conviction. Sometimes even evidence such as DNA may have come on the crime scene for unexpected reasons. Sometimes lawyers are too busy to defend clients, especially poor ones, properly. Sometimes lawyers may make a mistake or have antagonized a judge who may rule against them for these reasons. New evidence may appear later that clears some of the crime. Now, the thing about doing this way is, let's say I think one example is a really strong example. So I want to either start with that or maybe finish with that. So for example, that's not very strong. What's my strongest argument here? I feel like this part about the lawyers is maybe a really important point. So maybe I move that one up to here, right? And because I just have it in point form, it's easy for me to kind of play around with it and move things around, right? You can just do this very quickly for your stuff. It didn't take forever to do this. Then once you've got this, it's not too hard. Here's your body paragraph. Here's another body paragraph. Here's another body paragraph. And I would actually do the body paragraphs first and then go back and write my opening paragraph. And after all that is done, then I would write my concluding paragraph. once you've got these body paragraphs written, it's way easier to do the opening paragraph. Because I would just list, well, here's my reasons for why I think this. And right here at the top, I've got those reasons, right? So you don't have to do it just because people are going to read it in a certain order. You don't have to write it in that same order. I know we're doing a lot of writing right now, and I was worried that people might be discouraged. I wanted to include real quick a couple of memes on writing that made me laugh. This one is Woody and Buzz, and Buzz is telling Woody, being a writer is 3% talent and 97% not being distracted by the internet or really anything else. And here's kind of a little meme on a similar theme, which is talking about all the different things that go into the writing process, binge snacking, actual writing, typing the word the and deleting it. That made me laugh because I've had so many problems writing the word the. Reading for inspiration, but you can see the majority of the time is spent surfing the internet. So I find I spend time on the internet if I'm not sure what to write. Doing those kind of outlines that I showed you really, really will help that. Okay. So, but don't worry if that's happening. We have all been there. Hopefully your writing is going well. Remember to call me if you're having problems with an assignment. Quick heads up that we will be closed on Friday. So I won't be here Friday to talk to, but I am still here tomorrow and Thursday. So if you're having some issues, give me a phone call. I would love to talk to you and help you with any assignments that you're having issues with. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye, everybody.